Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 11, Episode 52, overall 602 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, located at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Automall. Check out their website, barrycullen.com, for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, along with their great selection of all-electric vehicles and Cadillac vehicles as well. You can call the dealership at 519-824-0210 and tell them Chris Palme sent you, or you can email them at info@barrycullen.com. Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership has been family run and operated here in the city of Guelph since 1969, and they've been a proud sponsor or advertiser of Live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show for the past 3 years. I hope everybody watching in Canada had a happy Canadian Thanksgiving Day. I know I did. It was quiet, but I ate too much, and actually I feel a lot better. I picked up a cold last week, and I had a lot of sleep, and that really helps as well. So I hope everybody enjoyed your Thanksgiving Day. And sports, lots of sports going on with the Major League Baseball playoffs going on. The NHL's already started up, and obviously the NFL and the CFL as well. Speaking of CFL, this guest that I'm having on tonight, I met him in September at Hamilton Stadium during the Tiger Cats Winnipeg Blue Bombers game, and his name is Tim O'Shea. He is a veteran journalist and author and a podcast radio host of his own show, a co-host of a show called Skin and Game, which focuses on the business side of sports. And Tim has also covered the Buffalo Bills stadium negotiations for the Buffalo News. And Tim was one of the original columnists on the BuffaloBills.com website when they started up in the early 2000s. So we're going to bring on Tim O'Shea right now. Good evening, Tim. How are you?
Hey, Chris. Happy belated Thanksgiving to you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. Ours is a little bit earlier than yours over in the States.
It is. And I, one of these years I want to come over and enjoy it with my Canadian friends. Something else I'd like to, sometimes I have escaped to Canada.
That's on my intent.
On Thanksgiving here in the U.S., where everything open, and come and enjoy the normal day rather than the craziness we sometimes can have here. So happy Thanksgiving to you, and so glad to have met you I guess we're going on a couple of months ago, right? It was last month, and at the Ticats game, and looking forward to talking some sports.
Absolutely. And I was just in Hamilton on Saturday for the Tiger Cats Calgary game, and everybody expected Hamilton, who's in first in the East, to beat Calgary and clinch the East. And Calgary, who had lost 4 games in a row, came in and played like a first place team and beat Hamilton 37-20. And then with Ottawa losing to Montreal yesterday, the Cats still haven't clinched first in the East yet. And the Cats are now going to have to take care of business on the 24th against Ottawa if they want to win the East and have the East final at Hamilton Stadium, which is an easier road to the Grey Cup.
Well, and I'll tell you, I've been to 2 games in Hamilton. The most recent, of course, was the one where you and I met in September, and before that was a few years ago with the Grey Cup, and that was the Blue Bombers and the Ticats, right? And so fun, so fun on a couple of levels. One is, and this is Hamilton specific, going to a Tiger Cats game so reminds me of going to a Buffalo Bills game. The size and scope, of course, is different, but in terms of the fans' devotion to the team, in terms of knowing where you're at and who people are cheering for. It sounds kind of obvious, but you got to be there and feel it. There's a different feel. When you're walking into a Buffalo Bills game, when you're walking into a Tiger Cats game, it very much felt like, in a sense, going to a football game in Buffalo. But I got to tell you, too, I think more American fans who are, close to the border need to travel a little bit north and check out a CFL game. It's such a fun sport to watch. And I know you know that. I know you're, a fan of it and an expert on it. But for people just, south of the border here in the U.S., it really does fly under the radar. And I'd love to see that change. I know the Bills and the Argos are, frankly, trying to make that change, right? That's one of the bits of news lately.
Tim, as an American, can I get your perspective on the CFL and especially the Bills and MSLE partnership, along with suddenly now CFL changes that are going to take place in 2026, 2027? If you feel maybe the deal with the Bills and MSLE was important into making some of these rule changes across the league as well with the timing of this.
Sure. I may, I may not be able to speak with, with anything other than speculation on how that deal impacts rule changes. We could kind of brainstorm on that, but in terms of that Buffalo-Toronto connection, that it's a deal that seems to be the culmination, or at least if not the culmination, the next step in a decades-long dance between Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment and the Toronto sports scene and the Buffalo Bills and the Western New York sports scene. Since I know we've got a little bit of time, I'll just jump through the history as I've seen it. I think back to the early 2000s when Ralph Wilson, the founder of the Buffalo Bills, was of course alive and owned the team. And something that Mr. Wilson's family and executives were trying to do even back then, we're talking 20 years ago, even more, was try to make the Bills viable in Buffalo. And so what they did is they looked at the Toronto market and said, we've got to tap into that to try to pull in fans, maybe pull in sponsorship dollars. But we exponentially increase the size of our reach if we can include, officially or unofficially, Toronto and Southern Ontario as part of our Buffalo Bills market. So, as you know, and as fans who are old enough to remember this, will be aware, the Bills played a couple of games in Toronto at Rogers Centre for a number of years, each season for a number of years. And that even goes back to in the 90s. They did some preseason games there. So there's been this Bills-Toronto football relationship for a while. That series filtered out after a bit, but then, of course, much more recently, Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady became investors in the Buffalo Bills, or minority owners of the team. You've absolutely seen an increasing, and I think it's fair to say it's been, I don't know if it's been steadily increasing, but over time there's been an increase in the number of fans who come in from Toronto for games. I think the current political situation might impact that. I'm not sure. But over time, there's been a pretty significant increase, right? So something, some kind of arrangement between the Bills and the Argos really does seem to make sense in terms of promoting football in both countries. The thing that I think will be interesting to watch is what does each team get out of it? The Bills very much want to draw in more Toronto fans, and they want Toronto fans, Toronto businesses to buy suites, buy sponsorships, possibly, and regular fans to buy regular tickets. There's a clear benefit to doing that. Will the Argos be able to pull in fans from Buffalo? I don't know. I'm not even sure how much of a goal that is. I'm sure it's a goal, but where it ranks on the list of priorities, I think would be pretty interesting to see. But there's one last thing too. I mean, there's some definite Buffalo-Toronto football connections too. When you think of, of course, Doug Flutie. When you think of, I know his career, this next guy's career didn't, hasn't gone or didn't go exactly the way people might have envisioned. But Chad Kelly, of course, the nephew of Bill's great Jim Kelly, right?
Yep.
There's a lot there, and there's a lot to build on. So I'm excited to see it. I'm intrigued to see where it goes, what it yields, and how they measure it too. How do you measure success with that?
My only concern, Tim, is obviously there are Bills fans in Toronto, but to me, Toronto is very similar to Los Angeles. Los Angeles went 25 years, I think, without a team. And even with the Rams and the Chargers being back in LA, when visiting teams come in there, half the crowd or more are going for the other teams. And I find Toronto, there are Bills fans in Toronto, but I find there's Eagle fans, Patriot fans, Niner fans. It's kind of a neutral city from my perspective.
Yeah, I've seen that too, Chris. And I, again, I think there's a lot of evidence of this, but I think back to those Bills games, in the Buffalo Toronto series so many years ago, so many decades ago at this point. I remember one game they were playing the Dallas Cowboys, and technically it was a home game for the Buffalo Bills. You couldn't tell that in any sense, not by the crowd noise, not and who they were cheering for, not by the jerseys. It was there were not only were there a lot of Cowboys fans in there, not surprisingly, there's a lot of Cowboys fans absolutely everywhere, but there was there was not an overload of Bills fans in there. And yeah, I think Los Angeles is a great is a great parallel. It's funny. It's rare that you could. I know LA and I know Toronto quite well, both of them, and it's rare that you could parallel the two cities. But this is a way. They're cosmopolitan cities where you get a mix of people coming in and sometimes going out. But people are from all over in those two cities, and they bring their loyalties with them. So I think for the Buffalo Bills, all that said, you just need to tap into a fraction of the fan base in Toronto. You don't need, if there are, and I am making up this number for the purpose of this, our conversation here. If there's 1 million football fans in Toronto, if you get 5 or 10% of them, spending time and money on the Buffalo Bills, that's pretty significant for the Buffalo Bills, who already have a significant fan base on the American side of the border. The other part, though, is of course the corporate dollars. Buffalo has a very small corporate base. Toronto has a massive corporate base. The trick is, would Toronto-based corporations want to spend sponsorship dollars across the border, in the U.S. and Buffalo? I think there's people who have marketing expertise probably beyond the two of us who could have a long debate about how that's going to work. But it certainly is a motivation.
Well, Toronto's always been a Maple Leaf city, but
Yeah.
until the Blue Jays came around in '77, the Argos used to be the big ticket in
Right.
Toronto, and then by '82, '83, the Blue Jays kind of took over. And then with the Raptors, Toronto FC, the WNBA teams coming there to Toronto, the Argos have kind of fallen behind. But this year, when they've marketed the team 3 times, they've drawn really good crowds. And their last game before they wrap up the season against Calgary was October 4th against Hamilton.
Right.
They lost that game, but they had they lucked out with the weather. But they had Doug Flutie and Jim Kelly there, and they had a really good crowd. And if they market the team and market the players, not just Chad Kelly, I think football can do well in Toronto. I tell people, for an NFL team to come in Toronto, they don't have the stadium there. Like BMO Field's not big enough. The Rogers Center is now strictly for the Blue Jays. There's hardly any land in downtown in Toronto. For someone to bring a team to the NFL to Toronto, you're going to have to pay $2-3 billion for an expansion fee. Then you got to build the stadium on top of it. So economically, I don't think it's feasible for the NFL to ever come to Toronto. And I think they need to try to get the CFL, the Argonauts going. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why they're making some of these rule changes for 26 and 27.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing the NFL putting a team full-time in Toronto, and and take that for what it's worth, because if the NFL wants to do it, if NFL owners or prospective NFL owner wants to do it, the type of money you and I are talking about, that 2 or 3 billion to build a stadium, find the land, things like that, they'll spend the money. The thing is, there are other cities that, and they invariably in the United States, and in the purpose for the purpose of our discussion, the rest of the cities we're talking about are either in the U.S. or in other countries as well. Whether we're talking in Europe or I'm not sure this would happen with going down to Mexico City. The different places the NFL's looked or played. Toronto is one city on a list of, I've seen frequently on a list of 8 or 10 metropolitan markets that the NFL looks at for, potential relocation of franchises. But there aren't too many NFL teams right now. There's very few that are in a position of moving realistically. The Bills were one of those. But when they got their new stadium, which is, I'm sitting about 12 minutes away from it right now. So I drive by it all the time, and it's looking good. I've been inside. It's looking good on the inside and the outside. When the Bills got that deal for the new stadium, they're locked in Buffalo for quite some time now. So there aren't really a lot of teams left to threaten to move. So then we'd be talking an expansion franchise, and it's, for the reasons you're saying, and I think more, it's tough to see the NFL going to Toronto. Let me ask you, if you don't mind me turning this around on you, just one question here. What is your take on the rule changes we're talking about? What's your perspective as you think? Because I know you've got to think about it a lot.
Okay. Not sure if there's an issue with your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we seem to be freezing out a little bit here. Do you have me now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Gotcha. I don't know if I'd asked you a question. I'm not sure if it came through, but out of curiosity, what is your perspective on the rule changes in 26, 27?
I'm keeping an open mind, but I did have a former player from the Hamilton Tiger Cats on my show about a week and a half ago. Peter Diakolski played 11 years with in the Hamilton Tiger Cats. He's a really good guy. He is completely against them. A lot of the fans that are upset because apparently the GMs, the coaches, and the players weren't consulted, and they feel. So the ones that are against the changes feel that they're trying to Americanize the game. Now, the goalpost going behind the end zone, the NFL actually used to have their posts right in front of the goal line, like the CFL did. I kind of like where the goalposts are, but they're doing it for a safety measure. And then I think one of the biggest reasons, the one big change is no more 55-yard line. They are keeping the width of the field to 65 yards compared to 53 of the NFL. They're shortening from 110 to 100 yards. And I think that's what people are really upset about most, the 55-yard line. The end zones, which are 20 yards compared to the NFL's 10 yards, they're come back to 15, and I'm okay with 15 instead of 20. But the goalposts, I like seeing extra points or missed field goals being returned for touchdowns. It's an exciting part of the game, and they're going to miss that. And also, the 20-second play clock is now going to be 35 seconds. And the CFL, even without timeouts, you're not out of the game until there's 0 seconds. The NFL, when you hit 3 minutes or 2 minutes and your team's out of timeouts, that game is pretty well over. So there's some of the changes I like. Some of them I'm not sure about. I have spoken to the CFL commissioner off the record, Stuart Johnson, a couple weeks ago in Toronto. And one of my questions to Stuart was, how much of an impact are these changes going to affect university football, high school football here in Canada? And he just gave me the answer of it shouldn't really affect them at all that much. But I know a couple of the stadiums are used by college teams, so it's really very controversial. It is getting a lot of conversation, which is what the CFL wants. But I find people either like it or they don't like it. I don't find there's any in betweens, and I'm trying to keep an objective, open mind to it. And I'm hoping these changes do make the game better. We'll see what happens in 2026, 2027, but it's definitely going to affect the kicking game and special teams, getting rid of the 55-yard line, from my perspective.
Yeah, that sure will. And I'm thinking too, Well, take for example last night's Buffalo Bills game, right? And you get inside the 3 minutes, and the Bills. In fact, I mean the Falcons were ahead, but the Bills had briefly a shot at capturing that game. But once the Falcons scored more, you knew that it wasn't going to happen. And yeah, I mean, to me, watching the Canadian game, the speed, the excitement, frankly, and this is very much from an American kind of NFL. Somebody who grew up watching and then writing about the NFL from that kind of perspective. The Canadian game is, in a very good way, in a very entertaining and engaging way, a little less predictable because of the way that play clock works and the size of the field and the speed of the game. So, I can't say that I have a strong opinion because I am looking at it. I'm looking at it more as somebody who is an occasional fan and learning the game and an admirer of the game. What I would think, though, just from that distance, is for people who grew up watching the CFL, and one thing I love, of many things that I love and respect about the CFL, is the tradition and how much it means to generations of fans. I picked up on that right away, when I've been around the game and talking to people. I mean, rule changes like that, and whether we're talking CFL or any other sport, can be they're an adjustment period, and they're going to be controversial. So, I guess let's talk again next year and see what it's looking like, right? But yeah, I'm glad you got to talk to the commissioner too about how it'll impact the up and coming levels of the sport, the youth game, the scholastic game, the college game, because that's really, no matter what country we're talking about, that's where the future of football lies, right? And getting kids to play that game, as opposed to the many other sports they can play, and keep feeding the system, so you've got great players coming up, right?
One thing I've learned about being media one thing I learned about being in media is not be afraid of asking questions. And I'll say this about the new CFL commissioner, Stuart Johnston. He's very friendly and very approachable. And any question I asked him, he answered it. And what I love about the CFL, and I love the NFL too, but the NFL is kind of more corporate. The CFL, I've been able to talk to the commissioner. I've been able to talk to so many people connected with that league. And I grew up, obviously I was born here back in the 70s, and I grew up loving the CFL, the NFL, and college football. A lot of this younger generation, because of the gambling aspect and how cool the NFL, it's like, nope, it's got to be NFL. And it's like, you can be a CFL fan and an NFL fan and a college football fan. You don't have to pick each leagues. It's like AAA baseball, the Buffalo Bisons. You don't compare them to Major League Baseball. You just enjoy AAA baseball for what it is. I'm not calling CFL minor league. I'm just saying you can enjoy leagues for what it is.
Yeah, I love how the words "for what it is" were exactly what I was thinking as you are articulating that, Chris, and I totally agree. You don't need to have a loyalty to one league. If you're a sports fan, you may have a loyalty to a team or teams. You certainly, don't. I don't see why people would need to stick to just one league. Enjoy the sport, enjoy the great players and the great teams. For me as a journalist, and I've been a sports journalist since I was 17. I'll still describe myself as a sports fan, but candidly, and this, when you are in press boxes, you're not cheering. In fact, there's, in most press boxes in most leagues, there is a rule that prohibits you from clapping and cheering in a press box. So you become very, speaking for myself, but also a lot of people around me, you become very stoic, right? And
Yeah.
so you really, you don't lose the love of sports. If anything, you build it because you have the chance to talk to the people running the leagues, running the teams, calling the plays, executing the plays. You get to talk to the players, and it's a great privilege to see it from the inside. But you're also that stoic observer, and for me, I've learned to just enjoy sports for what they are. So I can come up, but to go back to where you and I met, I can come up to Winnipeg Blue Bombers Hamilton Tiger Cats game, and and I don't necessarily have a strong loyalty to either team. I live close to Hamilton, and I'm sitting there in Hamilton, and it's fun to see the Tiger Cats do well. But I'm not a fan specifically. I'm a fan of sports, and I'm an admirer of what's happening on the field. And if people just kind of look at each league and each game as what it is, sports are. I hope you don't mind the cliche. Sports are one of the few things out there in the world right now that can still bring us together and have us on a different side, yet still be enjoying ourselves. So we can feel differently. We can cheer against each other. And we can still get along. It's like amazing and all too rare nowadays.
Like, I'm a lifelong Toronto Argonauts fan, but doing freelance media work, I've become a fan of all 9 teams because I've gotten to know personnel and management from each team, and you want to see everybody do well. And to me, the CFL is like family, and they treat you like that. And I just started this new career in radio media 6 years ago, and the Toronto Argonauts were one of the first teams to give me media opportunities, along with your Buffalo Bandits and Buffalo Bisons. And I've done a lot of my education through covering these sports teams, and I'm extremely grateful for my opportunities, especially with the Canadian Football League as well.
Yeah, and that's awesome, by the way, that you built this career just in a half dozen years. So seriously, man, congrats to you. That takes, I have full appreciation for the grit and the motivation that it takes to be able to do that. So that's incredible. And you just named 2, speaking of teams and organizations in Buffalo, 2 fantastic ones, the Buffalo Bisons, the Buffalo Bandits. Chris, I'm thinking about that night you and I met in the Ticats press box, and you immediately, we were talking about the Bandits, and on the turf, what an incredible perennial champion organization they are, right? But also just how much fun the fans have, how passionate they are about all of this. And it's, and I remember, I'm going to date myself, seriously date myself on this one. But I grew up in Buffalo as a baseball fan, loved the Blue Jays, loved the Cincinnati Reds, Blue Jays because they were close, Reds because I had family in Cincy, and loved the Buffalo Bisons. And I remember back when I was a child, the Bisons were drawing 1 million fans a year, and that baseball stadium Buffalo was loaded with fans pretty much every night, even on the cold April nights. I mean, it was loaded up. And people were hoping to get a major league team in Buffalo, which obviously didn't work out. But the excitement around some of these smaller organizations is something really special.
Tim, I'm going to ask you this. Do you feel if Major League Baseball did expand to Buffalo in the 80s when I guess it was called Pilot Phil back then, do you think baseball would have succeeded, Major League Baseball would have succeeded in Buffalo?
I don't, and I wish I could say otherwise. But I'm going to amend my answer. I think Buffalo is big enough to hold 2 big league franchises, the Bills, and then one more. And we already had the Sabres, and I don't think there was the corporate. I'm going back to something I was talking about before with the Bills looking at Toronto with that massive corporate base. Buffalo doesn't have the population or the corporate base to support 3 major league teams. And so I think it would have been difficult, if not impossible, to make a Major League Buffalo Bisons sustainable, given the economics of baseball. And there's a few things you have to kind of think back to the time, but in no particular order. TV was becoming a bigger part of television broadcast rights were becoming a bigger part of all sports. So were the selling of fancy seats, premium seating, luxury suites, things where you need a bigger, wealthier market to do it and do it well. Salary caps. The leagues that had salary caps tended to be more friendly to smaller market teams than leagues that didn't have salary caps. And so even the Buffalo Sabres, if you remember back, and again, I'm once again going back to the early 2000s on this. The Buffalo Sabres came dangerously close to leaving Buffalo because they couldn't succeed financially in Buffalo. They could and they did, but the owners went. Well, the owners went to jail. I'm talking about the Regas family. A couple members of the Regas family were convicted of felonies and went to jail. The team, along with the Regas's, cable business went bankrupt. And for a while, Gary Bettman was running the NHL commissioner. Gary Bettman was running the Sabres, looking for a buyer. And only when they found Tom Golisano, a billionaire, founder of a company called Paychex, when he came in and bought them at a bargain price and turned them into a financial winner and an on the ice winner too, by the way. That really saved the Buffalo Sabres, but they were very close to moving to another city where there would have been more corporate money and billionaires willing to buy them and move them in. So the co-host of my podcast, Chris, is a guy named John Simperman, and we on Buffalo Toronto Public Media, we have this podcast, sports business podcast called Skin in the Game, and thank you for plugging it at the top of the show tonight. John is originally from Cleveland. He's run marketing for 4 big league sports teams in a variety of leagues. And, I asked him, John, Cleveland is such an incredible sports city. Why don't they have an NHL team? Right. And he said, it's not big enough. It's a lot bigger than Buffalo, which is why you see Cleveland have the Browns. It's why you see Cleveland have the Cavaliers, and it's why you see Cleveland have the Guardians. And the Guardians, the baseball team in Cleveland's been there for a long, long time. So the Browns, with the exception of when they were gone for a few years, and there was a point when Cleveland had to essentially I'm simplifying this, but they had to make a choice. We can have a basketball team, we're going to have a hockey team, and it's not that somebody literally had to choose one or the other, but once they committed to having an NBA team, there really wasn't the capacity in the market, even at Cleveland size. And Cleveland's much, much, much bigger than Buffalo. They really can only hold three teams. You see similar dynamic in, cities like Cincinnati, Kansas City, places like that. So, sadly, Buffalo's not big enough to have a Major League Baseball team. If you talk to Bob Rich, the owner of the Bisons, Bob and Mindy Rich were the ones pursuing that Major League team, they recognized that before the process was over, like the Major League Baseball was just moving in a direction where Buffalo wasn't going to be a viable market, and they kind of knew before they were told no that it wasn't going to work out, despite trying and trying and trying. In fact, they were told by people in Major League Baseball, and I'm paraphrasing this, I'd have to look up the exact quote. They were told, "Yeah, we just wish you were, this much bigger. If you're this much bigger, we'd love to put a team there because you've got the ownership, you've got the passion, you've got a great stadium, you have everything we want. We just need more people." So that is the ongoing issue.
Tim, by the way, and that's probably one of the reasons why the Buffalo Braves left Buffalo in 78 and 79 is not because of the support, but there wasn't enough corporate dollars. And Cleveland had an NHL team in the late 70s called the Cleveland Barons, and they ended up having to relocate, I believe, to the Minnesota North Stars as well. So people have to realize, too, when these teams come into these cities now, is the corporate dollar going to be enough? Because it's not just enough to have the fans show up, but you have to have corporate support behind these franchises.
Yeah. And, another reason, Chris, that you're right. And another reason that the Buffalo Braves left, especially back in the, in the late 70s, when, corporate dollars have always been vital. They're more vital now than they were in the late 70s, but they were certainly, to your point, important back then. The other thing that was going on with the Buffalo Braves back then is they wanted to be able to play on Saturday nights in the arena in Buffalo. It's an arena, Buffalo Memorial Auditorium. It's, it's gone the way of Maple Leaf Gardens. It's long gone, long closed down. And in Buffalo's case, the Aud is gone. But they wanted to play on Saturday nights. And ironically, it was college basketball. It was Canisius, college, now Canisius University, but Canisius College at the time had first dibs on, or at least first priority on playing on Saturday nights. And so, imagine that an NBA team not being able to, not being able to command the space they wanted, right, in their home arena because college basketball was so big here back then. So there's a lot of theories and versions of the story about why the Braves left Buffalo, but that's talk to the guy who owned the Braves, and that's one he'll tell you too.
And the Braves used to play some of their games at Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yeah,
When they couldn't get dates at the odd, they played at Maple Leaf Gardens. And I do believe the NBA was looking at Toronto as a franchise back in the 70s as well, long before the Raptors came.
And I'm sure happy they have the Raptors now. I got to tell you, as a sports journalist in Buffalo, talk about proximity of the two cities. It's been so fun over the years to be able to, hop in the car and drive to Toronto, which is not a far drive. It feels like a normal commute to me, and watch or cover, a Raptors game, which I don't do too much now, but I've done plenty of over the years. And I mean, heck, there's a guy from the Buffalo area, Jack Armstrong, who
Niagara.
you and everybody in Canada knows Jack, right?
Yep.
And here he's known, here meaning in the United States, in New York, he's known as a former D1 basketball coach. He crosses the border, and he's like one of the most authoritative. You could say it better than me, but one of the best known, most authoritative basketball voices in the country, and it's. So I mean, really having the Raptors close by is a real gift to Western New York. And that's another one. I'd love to see more Western New York fans hop in the car across the border and go to Toronto for some NBA games.
Why has basketball just never been popular in Buffalo, Western New York? Is it just because the Braves left, or it's just always been football and hockey and now lacrosse? Because the Buffalo Bandits, they draw 19,000 a game at the Key Bank.
That's a great question, Chris, and there's a few things going on there. And yeah, shout out to the Bandits for what they've been able to. As we were saying before, the franchise they've been able to build and the fan base, the incredible fan base that franchise has nurtured. It's got to be one of the great and probably, frankly, largely untold success stories in this region and maybe in all of North American sports. The Braves are out of this world. I'm sorry, the Bandits are out of this world. The Braves are out of this city. All right, so to your question. Basketball, I've struggled with that too. Why is basketball not as popular in Buffalo? Because it sure used to be between the Braves, and I'm a little young to remember the Braves. I was around, but I was a baby and a toddler, so I don't have a firsthand memory of it. But all that said, the Braves and then big three college basketball, which was Bonaventure, Canisius, Niagara. Now you could throw UB in there now too. 4 Division I teams. There's a great basketball history in this region. Number one, football has always ruled. You're absolutely right about that. Number two, although it's been a generation since they've been winners, when the Sabres are doing well, when there's even hope of the Sabres, making it into the playoffs or advancing, the passion for the Sabres around here runs incredibly deep. Even now, people care. They're frustrated. They're sad. They're looking at other things. But the Sabres manage to turn this around and start winning, and you're going to see the fans come back. So they're really, then a lot of people fall in love with the Bandits for sure. So, I think it's a couple of things. One is, it's a football dominated market. It's a hockey dominated market. That's absolutely true. Another one is the big three, big four now basketball teams aren't playing a lot of games in the arena. They're playing in their home arenas. So not that they never make it into KeyBank Center, but generally they're playing on, in their campus arenas, right? So it's just a different feel, a different excitement level, different marketing. When you see when you see the March Madness come to Buffalo, you'll see that arena loaded up with people. Now, those are a lot of fans coming in from out of town. It's not just people from Western New York and Southern Ontario. So you'll see the passion for basketball here, but there's got to be something that's drawing people in. And right now, there's football that does it. There's lacrosse that does it. There's, when it's going well over time, there's hockey. There just hasn't been that spark for basketball here. Another question you might ask, which kind of relates, is, but why not go up to Toronto for Raptors games? And part of that might be supply and demand and pricing. My wife and I we have a daughter who's in college in New York City, and when she was home last Christmas, as a Christmas gift, we took her up to a game in Toronto. And I think for 3 tickets, we probably paid, I might be off up or down by a couple hundred here, but we probably paid like $750, $800. It was fine. It was a Christmas gift. We're happy to, honestly, we love doing it. That's not something a lot of fans, one, can do at all, or two, can do on a regular basis. And then there's this thing in Buffalo, which I've never quite gotten my head around, that Toronto is this big, distant, faraway city. The reverse doesn't seem to be true. I know a lot of people from Toronto who, not nowadays, given what's going on between the leadership of the two countries. So I'm not speaking of the current day as we sit here now, but over time, I've had so many friends from Toronto and Southern Ontario who regularly would come to Buffalo to shop, to fly out, to go to a Bills game.
Yep.
I know very few people from Buffalo who would regularly go to Toronto, unless there was like a weekend getaway. They look at it as a vacation, not something to do for a day. Like, I used to go to comedy classes every day for a year at every week.
Second City?
At Second City, yeah.
Awesome.
I took their improv. I have my little, in the room next door, I have my graduation certificate from Second City. I'm very proud of it. I drove up to Toronto every week for a year, and I absolutely loved it. But the number of people from Buffalo who looked at me and said, "You're crazy. Why are you going to Toronto all the time?" They were not accepting of my idea. Well, one, I love doing it. Two, it takes me, it's a couple hours in a car. It's nothing, and people don't look at it that way.
Second City, that's where the late, great John Candy performed as well. And I was there in May to see one of my friends, Mary Kennedy. And I'm going to get back to Second City. And everybody thinks Toronto, obviously, hockey is a sports city too. But it's a great city for comedy and actors and actresses and musicians as well. Toronto is very diverse. It's like Chicago, it's like Los Angeles, and it's like New York. It's 7 or 8 million people. The only thing is, Toronto's probably the #1 city in North America for the traffic issues. Traffic is #1 in Toronto.
Yes, it is. It's a little worse nowadays with the construction on the Gardner too, right? So traffic doesn't bother me, but yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. And that is, by the way, that is something to know too about people. And I love my hometown. I love Buffalo. I love the people here. Our collective sense of what constitutes heavy traffic does not resemble what you would see in the cities that you mentioned. If like a terrible traffic day in Buffalo is a quick moving day in Los Angeles or Toronto or New York or Chicago. So the traffic probably scares people away a little bit as well.
When I was covering the Bisons in Buffalo or the Bandits, some of the guys would say, "Yeah, we're going to come over to Toronto," but they're smart. They would drive to Hamilton or Burlington and take the GO train, and that's what I do. And a lot of the Toronto Argonaut players in the CFL Argonauts, they take the GO train as well, and even the Toronto Maple Leaf players. Being downtown, public transit, or driving their cars around as well.
Yeah, and it's funny. I've never done that, and I should. And I've been advised to do that. I have, and again, this is kind of a Buffalo mentality that I have, that I drop when I go to New York City, where I am a lot, or other places. But a Buffalo mentality is you have your car and you go and you drive it to where you are going. So I just consider Toronto and Buffalo to be extensions of each other. Toronto obviously being the bigger end of the two, goes without saying. So I mean, this, hearing you say that, Chris, and hearing that even Maple Leafs players and Argos players are doing it too, and that
Yep.
you're doing it, I think I might just need to do that. I mean, do that, and I mean the Toronto train station, Union Station, it could not be more convenient to everything we're talking
No,
about.
the Skydome, the Rogers Center is 5 minutes away. If you don't want to go outside the Union Station, it leads you right to the Scotiabank Arena as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, on the weekends, the GO Train, you can get a weekend pass for $15, or on Saturdays only, $10 passes. Where can you go to Toronto that cheap for $10 or $15 driving?
And avoid that construction traffic on the Gardner. So I am sold. Next time I'm there, you know how I'm getting there.
Hey, Tim, I know we're running short on time here. I have a viewer watching from California. His name's Edward Hearn. He's a professional motorcycle racer. He's now a fan of my show. He's been a guest on my show. He just wanted to ask you, Tim, what sport has been the most interesting to cover in your career so far?
Oh, that's a time. And you said his name's Edward?
Edward Hearn, yeah.
Edward Hearn. So Edward, yeah, thank you for that question. I appreciate it. And that's a good question. Um, you know, the here's what I would say. There, I'm going to say flag football, and I'll tell you why. And it's I've written a lot about the four major league sports. I've written extensively about, particularly hockey and tackle football, NFL, right? But flag football, I was doing a piece for the New York Times a few years ago for their kids section, which was a section in the Sunday New York Times, and it was on the growth of flag football and the NFL's incredible support of flag football in the U.S. and in Canada. And so I was interviewing Troy Vincent, the executive vice president of the league, and also happened to be a former Buffalo Bill. And and I mentioned to him offhandedly as we were just chatting before the interview, and he said, "So, Tim, what is new in your world, right?" And he and I had talked a few times. We didn't know each other well, but he asked me that question. I said, Troy, I'm a teacher, and I was teaching part time at a school in Buffalo. And I said, I've got a group of students who want to form a flag football team. They don't have, and this was an all girls school where my daughter attended. And so because it was all young women, as you can imagine, they really hadn't had opportunity to play football, tackle football in their life. But they loved the Bills, they loved football, and they wanted to play. So Troy said, that's incredible. If you'll have me, I'd love to come to the school for a day. I'd love to fly to Buffalo, come to the school, hear about their love for the game, get their insights on how we as the NFL could better market to women and young women in particular. And I think I could help him get a team started. So he did. He flew to, a few months later, he flew to Buffalo, spent a day in my classroom, held focus groups with all these these teenagers who are interested in the game and wanted to play, help them get a team started. And I'm coach now. And this is condensing this story, the arc is a couple of years now. But we're playing in a Buffalo Bills NFL flag tournament this Saturday. And really, really proud of that. So flag football, I would say, is my answer, not only because it's what it's meant to me as a dad. My daughter played, and her friends have played, and as somebody who's had a chance to now coach it, but also looking at, the willingness that one of the top executives in the game, Troy Vincent, had and still has. He's still in touch with us and with these students to, leave his offices in New York for a day, come to suburban Buffalo and spend a day with a group of 15-year-olds who wanted to play the sport that he helps run at the highest levels. That was impactful. It was impactful as a journalist. It was impactful as a parent. It was impactful as a person.
Hey, Tim, I know we're running short on time. I definitely would like to have you on for part 2. And I want to get this question in before we wrap it up. You've interviewed so many athletes and celebrities and presidents. Is there one particular interview that stands out the most to you in your career so far?
Well, I appreciate that question, Chris. And I would love to come back for a part 2. So you just let me know when, and we'll do it. I I've been really blessed to spend so much time with interesting people. One, and I'm so grateful for it. One that jumps out to me because it really kind of brought me full circle to why I wanted to be a sports writer. Is a piece that I wrote for a magazine called Baseball Digest, and a national magazine published out of Chicago, and it was a bunch of years ago, and it was a pretty straightforward piece, but pretty deep for me, and it was how to play third base, just like a tutorial piece, how to be a great third baseman with Brooks Robinson, who arguably was the greatest third baseman in the history of the game. Then and now, he's since gone. He's since passed. But even years after his death, I think it's fair to say Brooks Robinson was the absolute best at that. At that position. And so to have the chance to sit and talk to a guy who I didn't grow up watching him. I was a little young to have grown up watching him, but I grew up idolizing, reading about him. And then to be able to sit and talk with him in detail about how to play that position in a game that I loved, and that I was never, it's a whole story. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, and I was never, I just wasn't good. I couldn't hit a ball. So obviously I wasn't going to make it to the major leagues. And, once I accepted that, I realized, I might be able to make it a different way. If I become a writer, I could write about the sport and I could be a part of the sport. And so that's what led me into becoming a sports writer. And so to have the chance to use that gift of being a sports writer, to sit with one of the greatest ever and talk about how, in this case, he did what he did, was incredible. And if I dig deep in my mind, I've got a lot of examples that are probably equally powerful, but because I was one of the first ones, that's a big one that jumps out.
Tim, finally, where can our audience follow you on social media, and the best way of contacting you, and your next show called Skin and Game podcast and radio show with John?
Great. Well, I appreciate you asking. So I'm on the various socials, particularly Twitter and Instagram. I should say X. I still say Twitter, X and Instagram at Tim O'Shea. So just at TIMOSHEI. There's a website, timoshai.com, where you can always contact me through that, if not through social media. And Skin in the Game is on Buffalo Toronto Public Media. So you could just Google Skin in the Game podcast. You'll find us, or go to the Buffalo Toronto Public Media website and you'll find us. And you will find it's a radio show and a podcast. So we're on the air Saturday afternoons at 4 p.m. and again on Sunday mornings and Tuesday mornings. Or you can just listen to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever the old term, wherever you get your podcasts. Skin in the Game will be available, and it drops every Saturday around 4 p.m.
Tim, do you have 30 seconds for one more question?
You got
Steve Taylor, who's watching on Facebook, wants to ask you, Tim, any more books coming out in the near future? Always like your reads.
Well, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I've got a couple of, one I've talked about a little bit, so I can throw it out there, and the other one I have to be a little more, I can give a hint, I have to be a little more circumspect. So I am working on a book with one of the greatest coaches in the history of football, and I can't go too far beyond that. But it's a book I'm my co-author and I are honored and excited to be doing. So that's one. I'm also working on a book project that tells a story, and a story that you and I have been talking about here, Chris, the story of what it has taken to keep the Buffalo Bills here in Buffalo. And it's a story of the decades-long quest to keep a team in a city that loves it, even though there are a lot of other cities that would have loved to have that team. So, and as those books come together, Chris, I'd love to come back on and talk a lot more about those and everything else that we've got going on. And this has been really fun. Again, congratulations on this show. This is incredible, and you're fun to talk to. It doesn't even feel like it's been anywhere near an hour.
I think my former career, I used to be in security for a major casino gambling environment. I think
Hmm.
helped me prepare for this. And I learned how to talk to people. Listening is probably just as important as talking and thinking on your feet too. Eric Smith of the Toronto Raptors he came on my show 4 years ago, gave me some advice. Eric was a big help to me along with Chuck Swirsky. Chris, it's okay to write notes and points down, but talk to your guests like you're having a natural conversation. And that really helps with interviews too.
It sure does. It sure does. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Tim. And we'll definitely have you back on again in the future. We'll
You
talk
got
to
it.
you soon.
Talk
Thanks,
to you
Tim.
soon. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
All right, everyone. That wraps up season 11, episode 52, overall 602 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. Again, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership here in Guelph. And I want to say thank you to my guest, Tim O'Shea, for coming on here today. He is a journalist, author, and a speaker, and he's written, I think, over 60 plus books, children's books as well. And he's also a podcast host and radio show host of Skin and Game podcast show, radio show. So please check that out as well. And before we wrap up this show, another comment from Steve Taylor. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Steve and Edward Hearn for watching this show as well. And before we wrap up the show, I have another announcement to make as well. And I'm looking forward to my next show, which is going to be tonight. And I'm going to put that ticker up here right now. My next Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, since I can't find the ticker, I'm just going to announce it right now, is tonight. 8 o'clock tonight. I have a special guest. It's her first appearance on her show. Her name is Slamming Sammy. She is a female independent pro wrestler out of Dunbar, Pennsylvania. So Slammin' Sammy, independent pro wrestler out of Dunbar, Pennsylvania, which is about 50 miles south of Pittsburgh, will be on here tonight at 8 o'clock on Live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership here in Guelph. Before we wrap up this show, guys, I'm going to play a little bit of a pre-game interview I did with former legendary Hamilton Spectator columnist, and now he's with the Tiger Cats Audio Network and TigerCats.ca writer, Steve Milton, before the Calgary Hamilton game, and we're going to play that interview right now. Steve Milton from the Tiger Cats Audio Network, TigerCats.ca, courtesy of my YouTube channel, Chris Palme, Live with CDP Talk Show. Please make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Here's Steve Milton. Chris Palme live here at Hamilton Stadium for today's CFL matchup between the 8-7 Calgary Stampeders and the 10-6 Hamilton Tiger Cats. I have a special guest. His name is Steve Milton from the Tiger Cats Audio Network and TigerCats.ca. Steve, thoughts on the Tiger Cats rebounding last Saturday in Toronto with that impressive 47-29 win over the Argonauts?
Outstanding. And first of all, thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it. Outstanding turnaround. I don't know if you know this, but that I think is the third biggest turnaround in Tiger Cat history, and I think certainly the biggest since 1999, when they went from a minus 37 the week before to a plus whatever it was against Toronto. I think it was really, really important. It was important for their momentum. It was important not to have a losing streak of 2 games, and now that you can say, instead of having a 2-game losing streak, they've won 4 out of 5, and that's pretty important when you hit this time of year.
How impressive was the defensive play last week against the Argonauts? 9 sacks and I believe 5 turnovers, including 4 interceptions.
They played against who they had to play against, Chris. Obviously the Argos weren't feeling right about at their quarterback after their starter got hurt, and they did it, and they had to make an adjustment too. Don't forget that they'd only prepared partially to play against Aggies. So I thought that was a terrific job of coaching, and secondly getting the pressure on, and they needed to see that because they haven't been making, in my mind, enough sacks and putting enough pressure on certain types of quarterbacks, and they saw an opening there. They blew through that one part of the Argo offensive line. They recognized where the holes were, and they took advantage of it, and they did a pretty good job against the run. And They made the interceptions, they made the 9 sacks. So, and there's a correlation between those two things, obviously, because this is a very aggressive defensive backfield, and they can only play aggressively if you're getting really, really, really good pressure on the quarterback, and that's the way it works. And I think it gave them some momentum. And the other thing is, they learned from their mistakes the previous week. They talked about it all week after they got throttled in Winnipeg. We have to show up on time, and they did right from the opening kickoff.
What are your thoughts on running back Greg Bell, and how much does he mean to this offense now, especially being healthy?
It changes a lot of things. For a long time, and it's still sort of the same. The pass would set up the run on this team. Now you have to watch Bell later because they get some. I thought it was tremendous because a lot of those yards that he has over the last 5 games, 550, it's a number of touches. And that is a commitment that Scott Milanovich was making, even when they were only making 3 and 4 a few games ago. The number of touches in the last 5 games has been tremendous. And that's pretty important. The line has sort of really solidified a lot more now. They know each other. We forget they had 2 young tackles in the middle 3. Guys were getting used to each other. A center had moved over from guard, was a new guard. Revenberg was kind of the only constant there, plus they had 2 young tackles only in their second year. So that choreography, I like to call it, that dance of the elephants is what I joke about them on that offensive line, has really come along, and that really helps them. So now the run is setting up the pass, which you haven't seen as much of that in the Ticats in the last 2 or 3 years.
Steve, it's been a while since the Grey Cup winner has been in Hamilton since 1999. You've covered this team a long time. Do you feel this team is a legitimate Grey Cup contender and maybe the best team they've had in Hamilton since 99 possibly?
Yeah, the 2021 team was pretty good too. Remember, they could have won the Grey Cup. I would say should have won the Grey Cup. They had the winning touchdown in their hands at home. But yeah, it's one of the best they've had in a long time. And there's something about the team that I like. Remind me a little bit of the Blue Jays. They're an easy to like kind of team. They know how to rally. They have found different ways to win. They talk a lot about process, but every team does. And I think they truly learn from their mistakes. And I really think every team says this, but not every team can do this. That whole thing, we have to go 1-0 this week. We can't think 2 games down the road. And a couple of times that they have thought down the road, or they've said, we just clinched the playoffs. That was part of what happened in Winnipeg. They woke up to find out that they were in the playoffs. And I think that had a little bit of a sagging effect on it. They learned from that. And they really do believe in that 1-0 this week theory. You can't get them to talk about a game 2 down the road, or really after about Wednesday of a week, Tuesday of a week, it's really hard to get them to talk about what happened last week, other than what they might extract from that, but not about sort of what happened.
Thoughts on today's opponents, the Calgary Stampeders, and what are some keys for a Tiger Cat win over a Calgary team that's desperate for a win?
Well, number one, obviously, has to be to stop the run. I mean, they're an RPO team, a really great RPO team, because they have a rollout quarterback who can buy time with his legs. So they've got to stop the run first. They've got to stop Cedric Mills, who leads the league. They have to do that. That's A1 priority. Even though they've got a receiving core that can match just about anybody's, that gets set up better by the run, because a lot of that comes on RPO. And they've got to square off and keep VA, that's Fernandez Jr., inside. Make them beat you from the inside and get to them as quickly as you could get from last week. Trouble is, you're going to be playing against a bit better line. Of course, you're playing against a better quarterback than you have in the last couple of weeks. So this is a challenge for them, but I think that's the big thing. And then take advantage of the aggressiveness. Now, Calgary gives up an awful lot of yards, just like Hamilton's defense does. And like Hamilton's defense, they balance that with making big plays. Well, try to take advantage of the fact that they give up an awful lot of yards. And Bo has been, one thing that's happened with Bo is that he'll take now what he's been given, not try to always force it. And then you can go over the top. At one point, he's going to go over the top to Kenny Lawler or to any number of guys that can get down. But possession games, take those little things against the defense. But number one, stop the run.
And finally, Steve, just quick thoughts on the CFL changes to the game in 26-27 from your perspective.
I'm big on it. I would make one tweak, and I've been writing about this for about 40, 50 years, and it's not about but I like the fact that they're going to keep the single point in. I would not give anybody a point for a single for a ball that bounces out of the end zone, because you can play that ball. That's the only change I'll make, and I can guarantee within 2 years that will probably happen, because they'll say, hey, let's make it consistent with other rules. So I like it. You had to do something about it. You can't just sort of stay the way they are. Some of the changes will work, some won't. It reminds me a little bit when the NHL came back from their lockout. And it wasn't anyone. The hockey was way much better. Was much better. They had to sort of modernize the NHL game, and it wasn't any one rule. They brought, if you remember, there was a million changes of emphasis in the NHL, and it really changed things a little bit. I know a lot of coaches don't like it, certain things about it, but there will be those of us in the game who monitor it and make sure that that they actually are true to their word, that this will always stay a 3-down game. There will always be a restraining line. There will always be 12 men. There will always be the halo, the 5-yard halo, 2 or 3. It'll always be 65 yards wide. That's the big thing. The width is much more important than the depth of the field.
Finally, Steve, where can people find you on social media?
I don't do a lot of social media, but the best is just to because social media is undefeated. I learned that in my days at the newspaper, but I respond to all emails, because that's different than tweeting, and that's Smilton, smilton at ticats.ca, same as all people, and I respond to that. It might take me a minute or two to do it, and of course you can read our stuff on ticats.ca and listen to it on the Ticats audio network.
Steve, I want to say thank you for doing this interview, and continued success, and look forward to a very good game this afternoon between Calgary and Hamilton at 3 o'clock, and you can listen to it on the Tiger Cats audio network with Rick Zamperin and Simone Lawrence. Talk to you later. Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Keep up the good work.
Chris Paul. That was Steve Milton from the Tiger Cats Audio Network and Tiger Cats CA, and he's a former longtime columnist with the Hamilton Spectator. That was before the Hamilton-Calgary game on Saturday, where Calgary came in and outplayed the Hamilton Tiger Cats 37-20. Calgary's now 9-7. Hamilton's 10-7. Hamilton now needs to win their regular season final on October 24th against Ottawa, or they need Montreal to lose one more game there as well. So I want to say thank you to Steve Milton and also the Hamilton Tiger Cats organization for having me down on Saturday as freelance media. So make sure you check out my Tiger Cats game day story and some of my pictures and videos as well. And I'm looking forward to hopefully being down in Hamilton for 1 or 2 more games this season as well, before the Grey Cup starts in November as well. And looking forward to this year's Grey Cup, which is going to be held at Princess Auto Stadium in Winnipeg, I believe, on Sunday, November 16th. As we wrap up this show, guys, because I have another show tonight at 8 o'clock with pro wrestler Slamming Sammy on at 8 o'clock. The next Live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show, again, brought to you by BarryCullen.com, will be tonight at 8 o'clock with Slamming Sammy. And then my next show will be on Friday, October 17th at 12 p.m. Eastern with Detroit Red Wings reporter and from Detroit Hockey Now, the legendary Kevin Allen will be on, and we're going to talk a little bit of the 25-26 Detroit Red Wings, who are celebrating their 100th year in the NHL, and maybe talk a little bit about the Wings' big wins on Saturday and Monday against the Toronto Maple Leafs, 6-3 at Little Caesars, and 3-2 yesterday on a winning goal by Mason Appleton as well. And the Wings are back in action tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Little Caesars Arena. You can listen to the game on the Ticket 97.1 with Ken Cow and Paul Woods, and hopefully the Red Wings can beat the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers for their 3rd straight win as well. And as we wrap up this show, Major League Baseball playoffs tonight, 8:07, National League Championship Series, Dodgers Brewers game 2, must win for Milwaukee. They don't want to go back to Dodger Stadium down 0-2 for the next 3 games. Dodgers won last night 2-1 over the Brewers. And the Blue Jays in Seattle are back up on Wednesday at 8:08 p.m. as well. And I want to say thank you to everyone watching this show on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, Instagram, and Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is available on these audio platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Good Pods, and wherever podcasts are available. Anyways, thank you to Tim O'Shea, or not Tim O'Shea, Tim O'Shea, author, journalist, and speaker, and again, the podcast co-host of a podcast radio show called Skin in Game as well. So thank you to Tim for coming on here today, and hope to have Tim back on again and talk a little more about his career in journalism, in media, and some more of his interviews and books as well. So that's about it, guys. I will see you back here at 8 o'clock tonight with Slammin' Sammy, and we're going to talk a little bit about her independent pro wrestling career as well. And she's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan as well, so we'll talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers with Slammin' Sammy as well. I want to say thank you to everyone for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show, again brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership here in Guelph. Talk to you guys soon, and thanks for watching Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show.